Perfecto. Aquí estamos en lección 3. Vamos a repasar las frutas y las verduras, las preferencias. Vamos a seguir hablando de los objetos indirectos. Vamos a aprender algo nuevo, los verbos irregulares, with the little I in parentheses. So that means that they're a stem-changing verb. So we'll talk about that today. So I guess that's the first thing we're going to be talking about. So jumping right into it, stem-changing verbs. So remember with like a regular verb, you have the ending. Like, so if this vestir is an IR verb, we need to take away that IR and then we add back like o, es, e, imos, o, depending on the conjugation, right? Everything that comes before the IR is what's called the stem or the base.
Yep.
So these stem changing verbs mean that they're going to change here as well. So this first type, if you see verb, like if you're looking up verbs in a dictionary or something like that, and you see that it's got a little parentheses next to it with a letter in it, that means that's going to apply to the stem, that it's a stem changing verb, and whatever's in parentheses will go into the stem. So for this particular one, in these types, you'll typically, they have an E in the stem, and you'll change the E to an I in the base. So vestir means to dress or to wear. So if you want to say, I wear a new suit, you would say, yo visto un traje nuevo. So notice the ending still changes, just like IR verbs, but we also change this E here to an I, yo visto. So that's what it looks like on the verb chart. Vestir, yo visto, repite, yo visto.
Yo visto.
Tú vistes.
Tú vistes.
Él viste.
Él viste.
Ella viste.
Ella viste.
Usted viste.
Usted viste.
Nosotros vestimos.
Nosotros vestimos.
Ellos visten.
Ellos visten.
Ellas visten.
Ellas visten.
Ustedes visten.
Ustedes visten.
Muy bien. Let me see if this next slide, yeah, perfect. So these verbs are also referred to as boot verbs sometimes because you draw a little boot around where the stem changes. So notice it doesn't change in the nosotros or the vosotros form.
Got it. Yeah.
¿Qué viste él?
Él viste la bufanda.
And here,
Or una bufanda.
exacto. It'd be normal to say like he wears a scarf, right? So
yeah, I get weird with the whether to use the
él or una. Yeah, it's understandable.
Just you don't do that really for the profession.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Just because I know that it wouldn't be needed for profession, like you wouldn't say like una empresaria, it'd just be empresaria.
When you're talking about like your title, right? Like tú eres empresaria. Yeah, there are some
keep it.
some disconnections between the way that we use articles and the way that they're used in Spanish. You're right about that. Similar, like when we're talking about me gusta, you always use the article in Spanish. Me gusta la bufanda, right? You would always use the article with gustar. So there's certainly some disconnects between English and Spanish. But for the most part, if you know, they would overlap 80% of the situations.
Okay.
A la derecha, ¿qué viste él?
Él viste un traje.
¿Qué viste ella a la izquierda?
Ella viste unas sandalias.
¿Y a la derecha?
Ella viste unas zapatillas.
A la izquierda, ¿qué viste el gatito?
El gatito viste unos guantes.
Ajá, muy bien. Y a la derecha.
Ella viste un abrigo. Oh, yeah.
Sí, perfecto. A la izquierda, ¿qué viste?
Obama viste, is it una gorra?
Muy bien.
Una gorra.
Y a la derecha, ¿qué viste?
Él viste un cinturón.
Muy bien. A la izquierda, ¿qué viste?
Ella viste una blusa.
Muy bien. Y a la derecha, ¿qué viste?
Selena viste un vestido.
¿Qué viste a la izquierda?
Ella viste una ropa interior.
Mhm. In ropa interior is kind of like in English, we just say she wears underwear.
Okay,
So no article.
not a underwear.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Y a la derecha.
Él viste unos calcetines.
Muy bien. A la izquierda, ¿qué viste?
Él viste una camisa negra.
Muy bien. Or just una camisa, pero negra mejor. Y a la derecha, and I think we're referring to the tie.
Yeah. Él viste una corbata.
Muy bien. A la izquierda, ¿qué viste?
Él viste un polo.
Y a la derecha, ¿qué viste?
Él viste unos pantalones.
Muy bien. A la izquierda, ¿qué viste?
Él viste unos zapatos.
Y a la derecha.
Él viste una chaqueta.
Bien. So some other verbs that work this way would include the following. Repeat after me. Competir,
Competir,
pedir,
pedir,
despedir,
despedir,
impedir,
impedir,
servir,
servir,
y claro, vestir.
vestir.
Muy bien. So, vamos con competir.
Yo compito.
Muy bien.
Tú compites. Él compite. O ella compite. Nosotros competimos.
Muy bien.
Ellos compiten.
Muy bien, Carly. Excelente. Vamos con pedir.
Yo pido. Tú pides. Él pide. Nosotros pedimos. Ellos piden.
Muy bien. Despedir.
Yo despido. Tú despides. Él despide. Nosotros despedimos. Ellos despiden.
Muy bien.
Despiden.
Impedir.
Yo impido. Tú impides. Él impide. Nosotros impedimos. Ellos impiden.
Muy bien. Servir.
Yo sirvo. Tú sirves. Él sirve. Nosotros servimos.
Muy bien.
Ellos sirven.
Vestir.
Yo visto. Tú vistes. Él viste. Nosotros vestimos. Ellos visten.
Bien. So these words also work this way, but because of the accent mark, they're just slightly different because of where you see that little accent mark there.
Okay.
So freír, reír, and sonreír.
Bien. Yo frío.
Okay, vamos a practicar.
Yo frío. Tú fríes. Él fríe. Nosotros freímos. And the accent mark still goes to
It's still there in the accent mark, yep.
freímos. Ellos fríen.
Muy bien. Reír.
Yo río. Tú ríes. Él ríe. Nosotros reímos. Ellos ríen.
Muy bien. Y ahora sonreír.
Yo sonrío. Tú sonríes. Él sonríe. Nosotros sonreímos. Ellos sonríen.
Muy bien. Vamos a seguir practicando. Número 1.
Mi hija ríe con mis bromas. Mis colegas visten pantalones cortos. Nosotros despedimos nuestro viaje al Perú. Ustedes piden la comida. Yo repito las instrucciones. Armando fríe huevos para ti. Los alumnos repiten la lección. El policía impide el robo del banco. Mi enamorada viste minifaldas. ¿Qué significa minifaldas?
Mini skirts.
Oh,
Falda is skirt, so mini.
falda. Okay. Mis abuelos sonríen a menudo.
Muy bien. ¿Qué tipo de carro prefieres, Carly? ¿Prefieres las camionetas, los carros deportivos o los sedán?
Prefiero los carros deportivos.
¿Verdad? Muy bien.
Sí.
¿Qué comida prefieres?
Prefiero comida italiana o mexicana.
¿Qué prefieres, las montañas, la playa o la ciudad?
Prefiero las montañas.
Por eso vives en Colorado. ¿Prefieres películas románticas, dramáticas, de acción, de comedia o de horror?
Prefiero películas románticas.
Cuando estás de fiesta, ¿prefieres tomar qué tipo de bebida?
Prefiero tomar cerveza o vino.
¿Prefieres la pintura surrealista o realista?
Prefiero la pintura realista.
Muy bien. Okay, so last week we were starting to talk about the indirect object pronouns, I think, right?
Sí.
So le is an indirect object pronoun that can mean that can mean him or her, to him or to her, for him or for her. For example, yo le doy dinero a Pedro. I give Pedro money directly to him. Yo le hablo a mi hermana. I talk to my sister. Yo le escribo una carta al presidente. I write a letter for the president. So it has the idea that somebody's receiving something from the verb, right? So we've got the subject, that's the person that's doing it. In this situation, it's yo. And then you've got the person that's receiving these items. In the third person, as we've seen in the past with just learning like the subject pronouns and stuff like that, that's where sometimes people use these words a little bit more, but in specify exactly who they're talking about by adding the words a plus the person, right? Because le can mean several different things, you need to add a little bit of context, at least when you're establishing a conversation. Once we know who everybody's talking about, then you might leave that like a Pedro part off or the a mi hermana part off.
Sí.
Vamos a practicar. So just tell me what these mean in English. Yo le doy la tarea de español a mi alumno.
I give the Spanish homework to my student.
Muy bien. Tú le escribes una carta en español a tu novia.
You write a letter in Spanish to your girlfriend.
Muy bien. Él le trae la comida pronto a su patrón.
He brings the food soon to his boss or like employer.
Nosotros le compramos los víveres todos los días a nuestra abuela.
We buy the groceries every day for our grandma.
Yep. Ellos le hablan demasiado rápido a su hijo.
They talk too fast to their kid, their child, their son.
All of the above, correct? ¿Cuándo ustedes le mandan los productos a México?
When will you all send the products to Mexico?
Good. Le ayudo con la tarea esta noche a mi hermanito.
I help my little brother with the homework tonight.
Very good. ¿Le cocinas el bistec esta noche a tu papá?
Will you cook steak for your father tonight?
Good. ¿Cuándo le paga su patrón el salario a Rosa?
When will your boss pay the salary to Rosa?
Yeah, and more, not necessarily when will your boss, but when will Rosa's boss? When will her boss?
Oh
When-
yeah, her.
Because we're
When will
talking about
her? Yeah, when will Rosa's boss? Okay, I see.
Los colegas le informan al empleado nuevo que no hay trabajo el viernes.
The colleagues inform the new employee that there's not work Friday. This
Good.
Friday.
Muy bien, Carly. Le deseamos un buen viaje a nuestra amiga.
We wish a good trip to our friend.
Le imprimen los informes cada mañana a su jefe.
They print the forms every morning. Oh wait. Yeah. They print the forms every morning to their boss, but
For their boss.
for their boss.
For their boss, yeah.
Sue still, or is it Seuss?
No, good question. So it's su singular because jefe is singular.
Even though it's their boss, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Because the adjective is describing the boss, not them. So it's a little bit backwards from the way it works. These adjectives work in English.
Okay.
By the way, informe would be more of a report versus a
reports, yeah.
a form. Do you know how to say form?
Documentos or formas.
Formulario. Un formulario would directly be what you're referring to as a form.
Formulario.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so le can also mean you, to you, or for you if we're in the usted form, if you're trying to show more respect or talk more formally. So in this one, you can put a usted on the end. Yo le doy dinero a usted. It's like saying, I give you money. Yo le hablo means I speak to you. Palabras are in the parentheses because those would be like the direct object. You don't necessarily have to say them. They would be implied. And then yo le escribo una carta. I write a letter for you. I write a letter for you, or I write a letter to you. Okay. So again, to clarify, you can always add a usted on the end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's practice again here. Tell me what these mean in English. Yo le doy la tarea de español a usted.
I give the Spanish homework to you.
Ella le escribe una carta en español a usted.
She writes a letter in Spanish to you.
Él le trae la comida pronto.
So he brings the food to you soon.
Muy bien. Nosotros le compramos los víveres todos los días.
We buy the groceries every day for you.
Ellos le hablan demasiado rápido.
They speak too fast to you.
Good. Cuando ellos le mandan los productos.
When will they send the products to you?
Le ayudo con la tarea esta noche.
I help you with the homework tonight.
Le cocino el bistec esta noche.
I cook the steak for you tonight. Or well, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so Spanish uses the simple present tense a lot more. Like we're pretty rigid with when we had used like the future or the progressive, right? So like this one, you could translate it to like, should I cook the steak for you tonight? Or am I cooking the steak tonight? Will I cook the steak tonight? All of those would be kind of acceptable translations.
Okay.
And like number 7, le ayudo con la tarea esta noche. In English, we would say, I will help you with your homework tonight. In Spanish, it would be acceptable just to say that in the present tense.
Okay.
And there is a future tense. It's just for whatever reason, and Spanish speakers use the future and the progressive a little bit less than we do.
Okay.
¿Cuándo le paga el salario su patrón?
When will your boss pay you the salary?
Yep. In this situation, it is because we're in the usted form. It is when will your boss pay you? Good. Los colegas le informan que no hay trabajo el viernes.
The colleagues inform you that there's no work on Friday.
Le deseamos un buen viaje.
We wish you a good trip.
Le imprimen los informes cada mañana.
They print the reports for you every morning.
Good. So this is kind of the first step, developing your understanding of these words. They're kind of confusing, so I like to kind of ease my students into these words. Bien, vamos a cambiar de tema un poco y hablar de las frutas y las verduras. So tell me what you see here.
Banana, el plátano.
Yeah, just say it in Spanish. El plátano.
Oh, el plátano.
Y?
La manzana.
Yeah, good. Plátano, by the way, can kind of change from one country to another.
Okay.
Keep going.
La naranja, la fresa, la piña, el coco, las uvas, la pera, la zanahoria, la lechuga, el tomate, la papa, el ajo, el camote,
and just so you know, the word that I hear most is el camote here for a sweet potato. It's kind of a regional thing, I guess. It might be said one way in one country and one way in another. But camote is the primary word that I would use.
Okay.
I've heard la batata, I've heard la papa dulce. La papa dulce isn't really correct. That's more a kind of a Spanglish thing you'll hear around here.
Okay. La calabaza, la espinaca, la alcachofa. These are hard. La lima, el limón.
Yeah. Again, here, I've only heard the word el limón being used.
Okay.
But yeah, I suppose in some places, some people might say la lima. Wow, that was a super, super duper short lesson today. Do you want to jump up to the next lesson or do you want to finish here for today? I'm